Good evening, YouTube. I have seen a lot of movies lately and haven't made a video in a while. So, luckily for you tonight, we are going to do a double feature review. Also, luckily for you, we're going to talk about two movies that were both fantastic, and I recommend you see both of them. And those movies are The Lighthouse and Parasite. Both really well done. I left the theater very satisfied after each of them for different reasons. And we'll talk about those reasons, and we'll just dive in and start talking about Lighthouse. The Lighthouse was directed by Robert Eggers, who kind of got notoriety in 2015 for The Witch, which is a little divisive just in that a lot of people I was in the theater with thought it was silly, and there's admittedly some weird shots and aspects, and they went in thinking this was a horror movie. And it's not like a regular horror movie like Paranormal Activity or Saw. It's very atmospheric. It's very well done, and I really like the movie. I don't think there's really any jump scares. If not, there's very few, and it's more about this family that kind of gets kicked out of this Puritan colony, and they have to go build a cabin in the woods, and they kind of have to struggle with that while there is a witch that's kind of haunting and hunting them, and I really enjoy it. It's on Netflix. Check it out. That guy who directed The Witch, Robert Eggers, also directed this movie, The Lighthouse, which again was pitched and marketed, and I'm pretty sure if you go on IMDb, it's a horror movie. And I don't really like calling it that. To me, it was much more like a psychological thriller. It's very tense. It's very exciting. It's not really ever scary. The premise of the movie is Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson, pretty much the only two actors in the whole movie, are lighthouse keepers for a lighthouse, and they're supposed to be there on their shift as keepers of this house for 4 weeks. This terrible storm. It's a lighthouse and it's a dramatic movie, so there's storms. They're near the ocean. This huge, horrible storm comes through, and these two men who were in this very confined, intimate space and situation slowly start losing their minds, which sounds very, very simple. It really is. When you leave the movie, it's for me. It was. I think about it. I like to read more about how the movie's made and what this means, because there's a lot of little symbolism kind of things. But as a general story and plot, it's pretty straightforward. It's two guys trapped on an island going crazy because it's this hard, kind of claustrophobic situation that they're in, and they kind of start losing track of time and what's real or not. But it's very interesting, even before you see it. It's black and white. Like I said, there's only really two cast members, and that's Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe, who both do a fantastic job. We'll get more on that later. And I think what excites a lot of people, probably a lot of film buffs too, is that this isn't a set. This is on location. It's an actual little lighthouse home and tower on this very rocky, stormy island in Nova Scotia. It's an actual set, which makes it more fun when you see them walking around on the beach and around the house and onto the water and the sand. For me and a lot of other people, I guess, that's exciting and really cool that the actors and the crew and everyone with the cameras and the equipment where they're out there having to work with and around the terrain to make this movie, which looks so good. It is black and white. Something that's interesting that you notice, that anyone's going to notice, I sure did, is the aspect ratio. What the aspect ratio is you have a movie screen, and the aspect ratio is how wide it is as a ratio to how high it is. I normally don't notice things like that, and I'm sure a lot of people don't, but you will on this, because it's shot at an aspect ratio, I wrote it down, of 1.19 to 1, meaning it's almost a perfect square. So you're used to like big widescreen in the theater. Big widescreen. There's some of them are curved now, you might notice. It really is the whole time you're looking at a little square picture, which doesn't sound good when I'm saying it's like a smaller picture, but it really hammers in this aesthetic of like you're watching like kind of this old-timey film reel of two lighthouse keepers. It takes place like going into the 20th century, late 19th century, like how they're dressed, how they talk, and then the time period is set up. And that pulled me in more. I enjoyed the movie more, and I felt like it was a more complete experience, having it black and white and having it be on this kind of perfect square aspect ratio shot the whole time. Um, so even like before you get into like the story and the acting and everything, there's just so much that makes this movie unique and how it looks and how it feels. Um, I think what really needs to be said now is about the acting. Robert Pattinson, Willem Dafoe. Third time I've said their names, but they both do a phenomenal job, especially Willem Dafoe. And I'm not doing it service with this comparison, but if any of you have seen SpongeBob, how Mr. Krabs talks, that old sailor, it's me money, and how he chuckles, like the whole nautical jargon and dialect, and how Mr. Krabs talks. Now picture that as a real person, and Willem Dafoe just is this person, and it's so good. You don't believe for a second. It's almost borderlines on parody. How much, because he has this huge beard and he's acting crazy and his eyes are this big, but the way he talks and just how into it he is. I don't know if you research, you hire an accent coach, or you read books from that time, but my God, Willem Dafoe just is phenomenal in this. I hope some award recognition gets thrown to him because it was a lot of fun to watch. And Robert does a good job too, but Willem Dafoe's character and performance, it's so much more animated that it does take away a bit from Robert's a little bit. It's still great, but it's just, again, there's so much more life to it, and it's so fun to watch. Some people, since he is talking like from a different time and then like an old sailor captain, Captain Ahab kind of guy, some people might have a hard time really understanding what he's saying. I don't know if you're able to see it with subtitles, if that helps. I found if you're paying attention and listening, it's not like a completely different language, like you're having to read Shakespeare or something. You really generally can't follow what he's saying and what he means if you're paying attention. It's not that big offset from regular English. Speaking of voices, again, Robert Pattinson, great. My only one real complaint with the film is they're doing voices. Willem Dafoe is great. Maybe I don't have an ear for accents or dialects or colloquialisms. It sounded like Robert Pattinson's voice kept kind of changing. Like they couldn't really like agree that that's what his character is supposed to sound like. I don't know. Again, that's the only thing when I think back on the movie that I think of. Oh, I didn't like that. It was just kind of inconsistency with how Pattinson was talking. Overall, great film, simple-ish story. There's some shots that some people might think are a little weird or out of place. Like there's this kind of a side plot with like a mermaid going on and all this kind of oceanic imagery. There are apparently ties to Greek mythology in this story. I want to read more about it because I thought this movie was very entertaining. I think it's really, really, again, well made. It's very interesting in how it looks, how it feels. Great performances. To go on cinematography, like I said, it's black and white and looks good. You get these shots while the storm's going on of just these huge, gigantic waves and then the ocean and then the waves crashing. And those are just kind of sprinkles thrown into the movie. This already great movie, and then you get these beautiful, gorgeous shots of waves and water just crashing and roaring. Oh man, great. I'm trying to think. I have some stuff written down. So performances. Aspect ratio, talked about that. Yeah, but not a horror movie, which is how the movie's being marketed and how it was talked about. It's tense, it's a thriller, it's dramatic, and it's still rated R as it should be. But I wouldn't call this scary, and I think you should go see this in theaters if you can. But having said all that, we will now move on to Parasite, and this one's directed by Bong Joon-ho, who is a very famous Korean movie director who, after watching this movie and learning more about him and then the movie, he has a pretty extensive catalog so far of very critically well-received films. I've seen one of those, which is Snowpiercer, 2013, which, again, is Korean-made and directed by this man. It's full of American actors. Captain America, Chris Evans is in it, Octavia Spencer, John Hurt, he's English. Famous people. Ed Harris is in it. So, and the movie's in English. So it's a lot of Western actors. The movie's in English. Very entertaining. It's been on Netflix. I recommend you go see that movie as well because the same man directed that and he directed Parasite, which is so good. We have a lot to talk about with this. I want to throw some, I guess, disclaimers or talk about why maybe some people will be a little off put from seeing this movie. Like I said, Snowpiercer was in English. This movie, it's all in Korean. It's subtitled. And it's a foreign film, and already I'm sure some of you or some people would hear that and kind of, maybe I won't see that one. I'd still like to strongly encourage you to try to check it out in theaters if you can. If not, it'll be at Redbox or on demand or Amazon soon enough. But it's so good, and I hate for you to not see this because you don't. I get what you want to say or how you might feel about foreign films because I get it. In high school, I had a friend who was very into movies, dragged me to the Bijou Art House Theater in San Antonio to watch a foreign film in Polish about nuns. I get it, okay? And I watched the movie. I vaguely remember it. It was an interesting story. It was neat. I would not have blamed a lot of people I know, including members of my immediate family especially, that would have just passed out 30 minutes into the Nun movie. I get it, because it's slow, it was boring, and I think when a lot of people think of like foreign films, you kind of think artsy fartsy, and it's really slow, and oh, it's critics and all that, they'll enjoy it. I think that's dumb, or I understand why you think that. This movie is not like that. If you have a problem with like having to read subtitles, I kind of, okay, then yeah, maybe you don't want to watch this. But if you don't mind subtitles, maybe you're a big anime fan, like or something, and this movie really is a lot more accessible than I think a lot of other films. People when they talk about foreign films or oh, there's this new one at the art house theater. This is very a lot more accessible and very entertaining, and I can see a lot of people going in, if you can go in with an open mind, really enjoying this. Um, and it's hard to talk a lot about without giving too much away, but basically the story is you start with this dirt poor Korean family that's living like basically in a basement. It's their home, but it's like subterranean. People who are drunk come and piss in the alley outside their house. It's just they are just kind of down on their luck. The movie starts. They're fumigating outside, and the daughter's like, "Oh, should we close the windows?" And the dad's like, "No, leave them open, and we get free extermination." They're very they're as broke as you can get. Let's see, and it's the parents and then the two kids who are like college age, early 20s, sure. Um, the son gets an opportunity from a friend to go be an English tutor at a very wealthy family's the daughter of a very wealthy family. So he kind of gets access then into this family, their big, gorgeous house where a lot of the movie takes place, and kind of their wealth and their lifestyle. And I think like most of us maybe when you see I don't know someone who has a lot more than you do, you get to thinking like, oh, wouldn't it be nice if this was me? And then as the movie gets kind of going, he realizes, or the mom of the rich family mentions to the tutor like, my other son, it'd be nice if he had an art teacher. I'm looking for an art teacher. And so the son who's the tutor kind of gets to scheming, and then his sister kind of discreetly becomes the art tutor for the rich family, but the rich mom and the rich family doesn't know that the brother and sister are related, and this poor family starts to have more and more kind of not so morally upstanding connections to this rich family. And it's very funny, actually, the way the movie starts. It's very funny. It's very lighthearted. A lot of little jokes. I really was having fun. And then once the movie gets going at the halfway point, complete tone change. You don't really see it coming, but once it hits you, it's so good. A lot of other critics or reviewers have been having a hard time really giving this movie a genre, saying it represents a multitude, and I'd agree with that. Starts very lighthearted, then gets a little dark and very serious. I never say horror. It's not horror. It's not scary. It goes from being very lighthearted to very tense. And I don't think it suffers from that at all. I think it kind of it's a very inviting, and it pulls you in. And then once you're really situated and comfortable and familiar with these families, and then the disparity between like the very rich and the very poor one, this other thing happens, and the whole story changes, and it's really good. It's really well acted. The music's really good throughout. It looks really 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 nice. So there's too many reallys. I'm trying to go over my notes here. Yeah, it's like I keep saying, it goes from lighthearted to more serious. It's a very gradual rise in tension, kind of. Then you have this one thing halfway through the movie that really ups the stakes, and then the tension starts to go back to more of a gradual rise, and that's just, to me, you're just getting pulled more and more into the story with that one big yank in the middle. Again, it's in Korean with subtitles. It's not an artsy fartsy film. It's very entertaining. It's very good. A lot of care and talent went into making this movie. So now you're probably thinking, Ben, movies are expensive. I go to the theater maybe once a month or a few times a year. And you just gave me two really good movies. Which one should I see first? Between Lighthouse and Parasite, I like Parasite more. If I was gonna go to another movie like tomorrow and had to see one of these two again, I'd rather see Parasite again. You can't go wrong either way though. With Parasite, I just left. I thinking about it more. I think there's a little more to it. Like I said, there's so much in the Lighthouse, like a little symbolism and little details. But as far as the story, I think it's pretty simple and straightforward. I left the movie wanting to read more about it and how it's made and what maybe some of these more symbolic elements of the movie mean. Parasite, I'm still pondering and thinking about it. There's just more I want to explore with that, and more that pulled me in. I think there's more going on. I think if you're a really real, true film buff, you might like The Lighthouse more because of just how it's made and how it turned out and how it looks is so unique and different, between it being black and white and shot in this very unique location, and there only being two actors. And then this director, Robert Eager, just obviously has a very, very unique style when it comes to horror and tension. And I think if you're really into cinema and how movies are made, you would get more out of that. In terms of most people like me, who maybe don't notice a lot of that kind of stuff, I got a lot more enjoyment mileage out of Parasite, and I definitely want to try to see it again, and try to find more that I missed. I'd like to do that with The Lighthouse. I'd like to do it more with Parasite. Wanted to throw this little bit in, but before the video's over. And both these movies are really cool. It's been a really good year, or just a few months, with some really unique, cool movies. Joker, I enjoyed. I think it's gotten blown way out of proportion, whether and how good or bad it was. I thought it was very good. People are saying it's the best movie they've ever seen, and then people who just outright hate it. I don't agree with either of those. It was very good. Then you have Lighthouse and Parasite. Great. Because part of why this has been enjoyable, they're different and they're unique. It's not, I'm going to sound, you've heard this a million times probably from other YouTubers or maybe the news or your friends, with all like the reboots, remakes, sequels. I love Star Wars. I'm buying early tickets for the next one. I got my tickets for Rise of Skywalker that night it came out. I usually go to all the Avengers stuff the night it opens. I'm not better than Avengers or Marvel. I'm not smarter than that. I enjoy those things, but it's very refreshing and cool and nice as a change of pace to have these original, well-made, well-thought-out, and well-produced movies come out that aren't tied into anything, that aren't part of a franchise or universe or something that was made in the 70s or 80s and a bunch of suits thought they could rein it out for a cash grab or whatever. It's just people who had good ideas, and directors with vision and with talent and with actors who bring a lot of passion to what they were doing. And you get Lighthouse and you get Parasite. And I hope next year we maybe get a couple more like that. So thank you for watching. That's it.